around. Okay, Azad, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at Global School Leaders. We're so excited to have you here. It is International Women's Month, and so we're really excited to have this panel for you today, consisting of some really amazing women leaders from around the world. At Global School Leaders, we work on training school leaders in low and middle income countries. So we work in India, Kenya, Malaysia, Indonesia, and we have briefer partnerships in Nigeria, Uganda, and the Philippines. And, when we started at GSL, we work with partner organizations who are training school leaders who work in marginalized communities in these countries. And we've been very concerned with girls' education because obviously in many of the countries in which we work, girls' educational outcomes tend to be lower than males. So through this work, as we were exploring this issue of girls' education, we came to the realization that one of the issues within this the larger context is that women are underrepresented as school leaders, especially compared to the number of women who serve as teachers in education systems around the world. So we felt like it's really important to shine a spotlight on this issue and to discuss this in a public forum. And to discuss this, we have a really esteemed group of people, women leaders today. The moderator for the panel today is Kathleen Chu. She is the chair of our board of our Malaysian partner, Pemimpin GSL. Along with that, we have Kathy Bartlett, who's the director of Girl Rising. She used to lead the Global Education Fund for Children. And I'm sorry if I butchered the name of that. We also have Sucheta Bhatt, who's the CEO of Dream a Dream, who's based out of India. And they work with educators around orienting their mindsets and towards equity and excellence in education. And we have Lanre Unitan from SEED in Nigeria. We've been working with SEED on a program to reopen schools post-COVID, to train school leaders on the reopening of schools post-COVID. Unfortunately, Carolina Jimenez from the Varkey Foundation, who was supposed to join us this morning, is not feeling well, so she's unable to join us. So that's the panel for today, and we'll have each of the panelists introduce themselves once we begin the panel. But before we begin the panel, we wanted to ground our conversation today in the testimonial of an amazing school leader. We met Jayalakshmi ma'am, who works in Andhra Pradesh. She leads a secondary school, a residential secondary school for girls. And we have been, with the support of Echidna Giving, we've been running a program in Kenya and India, which focuses on preparing school leaders to bring girls back into school post-COVID, because there's certainly a concern that girls have been are at risk of not returning to school in the same numbers that pre-COVID, and also that we're also training school leaders, and as girls return to school, to create more gender-sensitive school environments. So through that program, we met Jayalakshmi ma'am, and we were so impressed with her story that we really wanted her to share her story with you. So let me turn it over to Jayalakshmi ma'am, and please go ahead, ma'am.
Yes. Hello, good evening, everybody.
Yes.
It is good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
In India. So I have to say good evening to you all. And I want to share my testimony. It is a pleasure to me to share with you. And I'm working as a principal in a residential school, as sir already told. And I have been with the AP Social Welfare Residential School past 25 years as a principal here, and working among the students who belongs to the marginalized sections. And that means scheduled caste especially, and it is a good organization. I am feeling very happy to be here with you all, a part of this, and I belongs to the school of Balayogi Gurukulam, Hindupur, India. It is my school building photo here, and I am working as a principal of 25 years. Since 1996, I have been with this organization. I'm happy to work in my institution as it is a place for promotion of the girl education actually. So far in 25 years, I have been with the girls only, girls schools only I have been working. And coming to my department, it is AP Swery Society. It is running 193 residential institutions under the Department of Social Welfare, Government of Andhra Pradesh. It is providing residential education to SC, ST, BC communities from 5th to intermediate classes, extending coaching for IIT and AIEEE and MSET entrance examinations. I can proudly say that 124 out of 193 schools are meant for girls, exclusively encouraging girl education by giving top priority. And coming to my society's achievements, we have 3 World Guinness Book of Records. One is in Bharatanatyam, one is in stick dance, and another one is dance marathon. And above all, I have to say proudly that the first tribal boy who climbed the Mount Everest belongs to our society. And Malwat Purna, who is the youngest girl who climbed the Mount Everest, also our student. And after this attempt, 14 more students climbed the Mount Everest, and also 15 students of our AP series scaled Mount Kilimanjaro. These are only a few examples of success about our society. About learning from the Project Shakti, I want to share a story with you all now. A girl was born to a 14 years old mother. Then you can understand the mother's age is 14 means very less. So father who expected a son did not turn up to take them home for 3 months. When the girl was 12 years old, the 26-year-old mother with 4 children was falling sick repeatedly because of the early marriage, we can see. So the mother wanted this girl to take care of household works like washing utensils, clothes, sweeping the floor, and she want the girl to stop going from the school. Father also used to talk in front of the girl many times that if the girl was born as a boy, he could have a support in the shop. Girl who was interested in studies promised her mother she would complete all the household works before and after the school hours and fulfilled it by studying in the free times like night hours. When she passed SSC as topper of the school, mother wanted to marry the girl, just keeping her in the home for 1 or 2 years, giving training in the cooking. Then a big U-turn took place in the life of the girl. The boss of the father, seeing the marks of the girl in SSC, scolded the father who was about to stop the education of the girl and insisted the father to continue the education of the girl. She became a topper in BSc, MSc, completed B.Ed, started working as a teacher in Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya of central government, and took care of her parents like a son in the old days. With a passion towards promoting girl education and awareness, she resigned her government job and joined in AP Series in 1996. She is nobody else, it's me, Jayalakshmi, principal of APSWR, Hindupur. So the story is my story only. So nobody else's story. Here, I'm glad to share that the education of a man may be useful for the family, but an educated woman is considered to be an university to her family and even to the next generations, so that the society would be explored in a right path. If I were not educated, my children would continue as shopkeepers or any other salesperson, liquor selling salesperson, which was the profession of my family. My family profession is liquor business. So I'm an educated woman. My son is graduated from IIT Chennai in electrical engineering. And also he has completed his MBA from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. Both are premier institutions of the India. And my daughter is a dentist. Hence, the connected generation also would be responsible, educated citizens to one's nation. I have seen the fruits of my education and significance of women empowerment. So, I want every girl to get higher education at any cost and for their empowerment. And I have a great satisfaction in working with Project Shakti and also in AP series. Till today, I have been trying my level best in promoting girl education in my own ways. But after being part of this Shakti, I'm so much excited as it is helping me in identifying the problems among our students and their families. We surveyed nearly 540 students and their parents and identified three problems. One is early child marriage, second one is menstrual disorders, third one is sending students for paid work in the vacation. Because already I shared with you that the girls belongs to marginalized community below poverty level families. In the vacation, parents send them for the paid work. Motivation from the Project Shakti helped us to identify ambassadors from the community, alumni, education experts, and also we have identified the parents. The role of the ambassadors is a key formula for the upliftment of the girl child education, as I have a great belief, as I mentioned in my story. The ambassadors identify, motivate, and rewrite the fate of the poor talented girls by inspiring to continue the girl education. We are conducting series of parent meetings week after week in our school. And here you can see in the first slide, B. Tippaka, and in the second slide, Chandrakala, and in the third slide, B. Sunita, and in the fourth slide, Kadaka. These are the different parents of the students when we have conducted the meetings. They have attended the meetings and they just self-evaluated the Project Shakti and in their lives, and just they came out and spoke like anything and motivated the other parents in the meetings that uh, they should not get married the children in the early age. So in the first case, the mother married at the age of 15 with a 30 years old man. So he was a drunkard and she faced so many problems. And in the last picture, she was a grandmother of a granddaughter who lost both the parents in the accident. This grandmother is very poor. In the old days, she was struggling to educate the granddaughter, and she pleaded the total convocation that the congregation felt in tears that she pleaded with joining the hands that not to get married in the early age. So every parent attended in the meeting has promised that they won't stop education for their children till they achieve their goal after listening the experience of these live examples. So most of the lady parents attended our meetings had faced gender inequality within their lives and shared their better experiences with years, and that uplifted my motto to make gender responsive school at my level best. And here are the some more slides of my parent meetings. We have seen good results and lot of change among the parents. This change will not be limited to this school itself, but also flow to other nooks and corners of the district, covering all the villages step by step, I believe. I am confident that the small initiation in the school definitely brings a great change in the community and enlighten the lives of many girls. This is great change in the society I can transform through Project Shakti. Project Shakti is started like a tiny raindrop and flowing like a river into the society, eradicating the blind beliefs about girls. I have started my journey with female discrimination, and I am completing my government service with a solution of gender responsive school. This is because of Project Shakti and the authorities of my AP Studies Society. My thanks to the both organizations. Before closing, I want to show the paper clipping of yesterday. The press people came to my school and they have taken all the evidences what we are doing in the school in the project, and they are very happy. They want to give wide publicity in the state. Enadu is a very leading paper in Andhra Pradesh. It goes to every home. So they have given a good write-up about the parent meetings and the interviews with the children and also the photos. So the media also recognized the good influence of Project Shakti among the students and parents and also in the society. So I have a great satisfaction that this project Shakti is going to the society and to transform the society. And I am very happy to be a part of Project Shakti as a school leader. Thank you for giving the opportunity. Thank you so much, Vananda.
Thank you, Jayalakshmi ma'am. We really appreciate your words and we congratulate you on the work that you've done in your school. And we're so happy that in addition to the recognition in the newspaper in Andhra Pradesh, you're now having an opportunity to speak to people around the world through this discussion. So congratulations and thank you. For the people who are attending, Jayalakshmi ma'am referred a couple of times to Project Shakti. This is the program that I was referring to earlier that Global School Leaders have been doing in partnership with India partner organization Alokit. And then in Kenya, we've been working with Dignitas, a partner organization there, on a project that's called Kanya in Kenya. And so together we've been working with about 225 school principals, all very similar to Jayalakshmi ma'am in terms of the efforts that they've taken now to get girls back into school post-COVID. So we'll now turn to our panel, and it's a great honor to again introduce Kathleen Chu. She is the director of the YTL Foundation in Malaysia, which is one of the leading foundations in Malaysia that particularly looks at education among other interests that they have there. I've known Kathleen now for a few years, and I'm just so impressed with her as a person, as a leader in the corporate world, as well as a leader in the philanthropic world. And Kathleen, was so delighted that you were able to join us today to lead this panel. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and thanks so much.
Thank you
and
so much.
could I request all the panelists to turn on their videos? Sorry, Kathleen.
Yes, Azad, thank you so much for that very warm introduction. It was a good day when we met about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and we have achieved so much together in school leadership in Malaysia. And today, I'm just so looking forward to unpacking the issues of gender equity in education and the role of women leaders in girls' education with this amazing panel of leaders. You know, I come from a family of many teachers. My mother was a teacher, my maternal grandmother and my grandfather were both teachers, and my mother-in-law was a teacher too. So it's amazing that I'm not a teacher, but I became a lawyer. So today's conversation about women leaders in education is a subject that is really close to my heart. And perhaps unsurprisingly, you know, for the generation that they were in, you would think that of the 4 teachers in my family, it was my grandfather who was the principal of his school. The other 3 women, my grandmother, my mother, my mother-in-law, I mean, they were wonderful teachers. And, you know, I still meet their students who tell me how they changed their lives. But they were not given the same opportunity to be leaders in the same way as my grandfather. So, you know, fast forward then from my grandparents' time and, you know, to more recent times today, and just looking at the Malaysian education system. And, you know, in 2013, the OECD did Teachers and Learning International Survey here, and they found that 71% of teachers in Malaysia were women. So that's great, we have a lot of women teachers, but only 49% of those principals were female. And what impact do you think that has on girls' education? Research has shown that women teachers often have positive effects on girls' education, but there's very little research done on the impact of female school principals. However, I recently read a report released by the Wallace Foundation, I think it was just last month, on how principals affect students and schools. And it shows that ethnically diverse principals can have a positive impact on students of their same ethnicity. I mean, to me, this would seem to indicate that female principals could positively impact girls in their schools as well. And in my own experience, it leads me, I believe that this impact can be really powerful, having female principals in schools which are, you know, are dealing with girls. I went to a girls' school that was founded by an Irish nun, and who, with so much spirit, came to Malaysia when she was 25 years old, and she started a new school. And she's a totally remarkable woman. And provided such a role model for all of us girls in that school. She had courage, and yet she had, huge kindness. And so that school of mine has produced really amazing women leaders. And I attribute it so much to the role model that she provided. And, she wasn't scared, she was courageous. And, proudly I say that the first woman central bank governor in Malaysia was from my school. And in Malaysia, we're fortunate, I think, that there are women in senior leadership positions in several sectors. I'm actually a lawyer by profession. And the two most senior positions in the judiciary in this country are held by women. The president of the Court of Appeal and the chief justice are both women. And 7 out of the 11 federal court judges here are women. And even though, there has been this disparity between female teachers in school versus principals, I feel that that is actually changing, because in Malaysia, where we run the GSL Pemimpin program, this year we have about 131 school leaders in the program, and of that, 65% are women. So this is a real improvement, even from the 2013 survey. However, of course, hearing from Jayalashmi and what she's doing in India, we know that this is not the same across the world. And we will soon hear from our panelists of their experience from the work that they are doing. So first of all, I think I'd like to invite our panelists. There's Kathy Bartlett, Sucheta Bhatt, and Landre, to just share a bit about their experience. If you will introduce yourself, tell us about your work, and share some opening thoughts on how you see issues of gender equity playing out in education. So firstly, can I invite Kathy to start off?
Thank you very much. So I'm Kathy Bartlett, and I'm based in Colorado. I work with Girl Rising, and I lead their Girl Rising Global Education Fund, which is a venture fund model to support early stage NGOs in Kenya and in India. But Girl Rising itself works in 11 countries around the world, in Southeast Asia, in South Asia, in Latin America, and in Africa. And we basically have a mission of using stories to bring forward issues around girls' education, the value of girls, and making sure they have growing opportunities in their lives. And we do this by creating a number of resources. We have a set of films that highlight the 9 girls thus far. And each of these girls has shown perseverance. These are actual girls around the world that we found in 2011, 2012 was when the films came out. And we've basically developed a curriculum, a gender sensitization, gender awareness, and life skills curriculum that uses the films as a way to trigger and promote conversations around gender equity, gender norms, girls and boys who are going through the curriculum, what their dreams are, who their support systems are. When I was hearing Jayalakshmi's madam's story, it's very similar to the stories that we hear in the Girl Rising films from around the world. They have found a way to persevere, and they often have support systems. So our curriculum really engages youth in a very active way to think about who are their mentors, who are their support systems. So with that in mind, and when I think about education, I was trained as an educator. And I would say that growing up, most of we had both men and women teachers, but all of our school heads in my time growing up were male. And I think it has changed. But in the 30 plus years that I've been working around the world in education development, I have seen over and over the power of having women teachers as role models, the power of and the need to provide opportunities for women in education to become leaders in all sorts of ways. I personally think that there are many women who are leaders in education but are not recognized formally as leaders. So how do we think about that and move that forward? So yeah, in Girl Rising, we're very excited about what's coming up, and we hope to be really looking at the importance and how using the curriculum helps teachers rethink and reflect on their interactions with girls and boys in their classrooms. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And Sujata, yeah, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and your views on gender equity?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Kathleen. It's an honor to be here. So I am the CEO of an organization called Dream a Dream. We are a non-profit based out of Bangalore in India. This is our 20th year, and our purpose, why we exist, is to empower young people who come from vulnerable backgrounds to overcome the impact of adversity. Adversity could be just poverty, malnutrition, exposure to crime and violence, any adverse experiences that children have, especially when they grow up in low socioeconomic backgrounds. How can they overcome the impact of that and thrive in the fast-changing world by developing their life skills? So, like I said, it's been 20 years, and to kind of respond to your question, we spent almost the first 17, 18 years really looking at empowerment. Now, we don't look specifically work with girls. We always ensure there's 50% enrollment of girls in our programs, but we look at empowerment, and we look specifically at what are the life skills that girls need to navigate their circumstances, navigate the challenges that they face in life, and prepare them for the future. And the more we did that, and the more we saw success stories of girls, choosing to get educated, choosing to have a career, choosing to say no to marriage, the more we realized that there were just as many girls who were still falling off the system, who were getting married whether they wanted to or not, were dropping out of school because they needed to start earning for the family or needed to take care of a sibling. And the more we tried to understand that, what we realized, and what also kept happening, is that our programs kept scaling. So we did our direct programs. Plus today we work with about 5 state governments. So we're reaching out to almost 2 million children every year. So the way we understood the challenge, that as girls were getting older and we were looking at systemic settings like this, that it's not just about empowerment of girls anymore. There are systemic biases, there are systemic barriers that come in the way of children, especially girls, which keeps pushing them back. So even if a girl finds her confidence, finds her voice, discovers what her passion is, it's not always the path to success, because then there are systemic inequities, whether it's our perception of girls, whether it's a family environment, whether it's a job that she's trying to go for, that keeps pushing them back. So today, that's the exploration, that let's move beyond just the empowerment of children, but to look at how we can shift systemic mindsets, especially inside of education, about what is success and what needs to change inside of education for all children to thrive, including girls.
Thank you so much. And that is, have you been working 20 years?
Yes.
You don't look like you're old enough.
Also, yeah, I have been working 20 years, not in Dream a Dream. I joined about 10 years back, but Dream a Dream is 20 years old, and I worked for 10 years before that in the corporate sector. Thank you.
And now, Lanre, can we hear from you?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Lanre, and I'm the Executive Director for SEED. SEED is Sustainable Education and Enterprise Development. and we work with schools that serve children from low-income families. We're currently in Lagos, Nigeria. And at the moment, we're working with about 700 schools in the 6 education districts of Lagos. For me personally, equity when it comes to education and being a girl. I was born into a family of 3 girls, and all 3 girls, we've all given birth to girls. So when we talk about girl education, it's close to my heart because, yeah, we're a family of girls. And education was very, something that my mother held very close to her heart. We lost her when she was 10, when I was 10. And one of the great legacies she would always say she left for us is education. So for me, girl education is very dear to my heart. And based on the work we do, yes, we work with schools, but we've seen a lot of things that has to do with, ensuring that girls are in school. Lagos is a melting pot of different cultures in Nigeria, and we get to see a lot of different tribes coming to Lagos. And, with some of these experiences we see in our schools, issues around, some children not being allowed to come to school, getting married early, like Sujeta mentioned. And we see a lot of the fact that there are certain barriers that allow, does not allow, the girl child to thrive within the school environment. And, the girls need a female role model that would also help them, see that things are possible and that they can become leaders themselves. It takes me to one of the stories I like to share. My husband's aunt has been the only female principal of an all-boys school in Lagos. And I remember that even the students that are now all grown, that, were our students when she was the principal, all had something to say, like, we never knew a woman could lead an all-boys school this way. In fact, all the other males that have done it have not, led the school as she has done. So I don't think it's about, whether you're male or female, it's about showing women can also lead. And we need more leaders. Of course, in Nigeria, when it comes to teachers as well, we see a lot of female teachers, but when it comes to leadership positions in the education sector, we do not see a lot of female leaders. And I would like to just finally point out, that was one of the great positives we've seen from our Honorable Commissioner, who is the Commissioner for Education in Lagos State. One of the key things that all our students, she was a principal in a school before she became the commissioner. And one of the things all her past students say is, how they were very close to her in terms of, having someone they could talk to, both girls and boys. And, she had that place where she was able to mentor all of our students. And, especially her female students, they were able to, see themselves or see a leader in her. And that is one of the great things that she had shown to the education community. So I believe that it's important for us to be able to encourage more. We've done well over the years to increase the numbers, but we can do more. And I think that's where I am. We can do better than what we're currently doing.
Thank you so much. I really believe that these role models are really important for girls, right? It is the women who stand up and, they give that opportunity to the girls to say, I can do it too. So thank you so much, Lanre, for sharing that. So now let me go back to Kathy. Kathy, you are director at Girls Rising, and I have to tell you that I so vividly remember viewing the Girls Rising film when it first came out, and it was hugely impactful. And so given that Girls Rising has such a wide reach across the world, what do you see as the key takeaways from research on the influence of teachers on girls' education? And by extension, what are you learning about the role of women school leaders?
So to start with your first question, I think we know from research that teachers are really the building block of a good learning system, of a good learning environment. And therefore, thinking about who our teachers are, whether they're supported, whether they feel the confidence and have the skills and knowledge to really provide quality learning opportunities for both boys and girls in their classroom, and children of all abilities, of different backgrounds. I think it is extraordinarily important to keep our focus on teachers, but by that, we also know, or at least in my experience of working in many countries in Africa and Asia in particular, we know that teachers are often doing double duty. Some teachers are both school leaders and classroom teachers. And how countries select their school leaders varies enormously. And I think I've heard many conversations with both men and women teachers and school leaders around how they were promoted. And it's not always clear, and they don't always have then the training and professional development they could benefit from as a new school leader. And I think that's why programs like Global School Leaders is so important. But I think we so often get focused on the academics of learning and how teachers are providing those academics. We don't think enough, and certainly during teacher training and during the early years of a teacher's life, when he or she is just beginning to figure out how to best manage their classrooms and how to deliver the curriculum that they need to deliver. We've often not really paid attention to what are now called soft skills or 21st century skills. And neither have we paid attention to helping teachers reflect and helping school leaders reflect on how do we think of girls and boys in this school. When I'm teaching, do I answer to the boys more than the girls, or vice versa? I can give you an example. When I was teaching, my head teacher would pop in my classroom to hand me things to pieces of paper, announcements to give to the kids to take home. When he popped in, he would be in the classroom for a couple of minutes. That was how he evaluated me at the end of our teaching year. He said, well, every time I walked in your classroom, you were doing well. That was very unsatisfying to me as a brand new teacher when I was starting out. And thankfully, I had other teacher colleagues who really took the lead and were more of a school leader than my school director was. They were the ones who gave me feedback. But I do think as we think about building more equitable systems of learning for girls and boys and students from all backgrounds, we need to think about how we begin that journey through when they do teacher training, and particularly, I would say, when they get into the classroom, because teacher training can be very abstract, and there could be many changes to formal teacher training that we could talk about. But when you get to the classroom, does the school leader set up an environment for teachers to come together and say, well, what is happening with girls and boys this year? Do we have more boys dropping out as they go up the ladder because of work they need to do at home? Is that happening to girls? What's the situation in our school? And I think we could do a lot more around supporting teachers and school leaders to embed gender norms, expectations, and also understanding where parents are coming from. Many for many years, I worked with the Aga Khan Foundation, and we did a lot of work in northern Pakistan, which was a more conservative area where often they didn't send girls to school. And yes, they wanted separate schools for girls. Yes, they wanted a wall around the school. And what I really took away from the 20 years I worked with AKF around girls' education was that we, as educators, teachers, school leaders, other folks in the education space, often don't listen well enough to what parents are actually saying. So, do they send their children to school, girls and boys? What is our assumption about why they wouldn't? Again, I'll refer back to when I was teaching. I worked with a lot of migrant students who did not have, whose parents were working out in the fields and didn't come to teacher conferences often. Most of the teachers in my school said, well, that's because they don't care. But I spoke Spanish and I spoke with them, and I knew that wasn't the case. So I would just say we need to think about how we not only improve teachers' ability to deliver curriculum, but to think about, are they building confidence? Are they building life skills? And are they embedding an understanding of gender equity and gender norms in different contexts to their situation? And lastly, what do they understand are parents' concerns that will help us ensure girls and boys stay in school and learn?
Yeah, I mean, I really resonate with that. And I think Jaya Lashmi mum said the same thing. I mean, she had this engagement with parents, and that was so critical in the success of how the girls were given the opportunity to stay in school. So that is something I think just maybe talk a little bit more about how do you think institutions can support teachers in learning these soft skills, dealing with parents, kind of making sure that they don't just teach maths and science, that they teach empathy, and that that the children understand, the importance of inclusivity, whether it's in terms of gender or ethnicity. Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on how institutions can support these teachers?
I do think we have to think about the trajectory of an educator's life. So there's the pre-service training. So what's inside of that? And what are the preparations? And where are the opportunities to practice some of those skills? And as I said, I think the most important learning as an educator, at least in my experience, is once you get into that classroom. And it's one thing to say, I believe in active learning, and then to be faced with 60 kids in a classroom or 100 kids, as I've often seen in many places. So we have to, it's there where teachers need support to put into practice the theories that they might have learned in their pre-service training. It's there where we need school leaders to, I think, mentor and demonstrate what it is to reach out to parents. I have spoken with many parents who don't feel comfortable going to schools because they themselves aren't educated. They may have had very mixed experience themselves in education. They're in many of the countries I've worked and traveled. They don't know how to engage teachers, and so they sort of take the kids and say, now these are during the school hours, you need to do what you need to do. And my understanding of education is my child should learn how to read and write and do math. So teachers, on the other hand, I have observed some are very engaging with parents, but many say, I know what's best for your child, so just drop the child off and let me educate your child. And they don't recognize, they don't acknowledge that In fact, the parents have been teaching the child since they were born, and they don't support the parent's continued role as a teacher, as an educator, particularly of passing, and we know the value of parents in terms of cultural values and life skills and how one comports oneself. So I think there's a huge gap between families and schools often. And to address that, I would like to see more explicit and proactive reflection and thinking about that during pre-service and during early years of teaching and during professional development, that we don't, that we keep bringing that back in, because to really succeed in education, the formula must include qualified and confident teachers with the right skills and knowledge. It must have good school leadership through the school leader and their committees, and it must have parents' engagement. And the child's at the center of that. So if any of those three pieces aren't there, it's like a three-legged stool. It's not going to be stable. So I feel like we need to really think about how to embed it. And I think what we've seen in the curriculum from Girl Rising with teachers, and I want to be clear, we've been using this now in different countries. We adapt it with local partners on the ground. But the evaluations that have happened with the curriculum are really promising in terms of, I was looking at one of the evaluations yesterday, and the teachers were reporting it helped them better understand the students' dreams. It helped them to create a more supportive environment and community in the classroom through the activities of the curriculum. It strengthened the teachers' bonds with the students, and it allowed the teachers themselves to reflect on their own dreams, which I thought was very interesting. We also know where girls and boys have gone through the curriculum, boys' attitudes and girls' attitudes have changed around gender norms and expectations, as have teachers. A teacher in India, I remember telling my colleague, I just didn't even think about gender. Nobody said this to me. I didn't think about whether I was including girls and boys in the same way, and I see now that I wasn't. So there are small things we can do. There are many folks like Girl Rising that have curricula that are working with teachers to rethink gender norms and gender equity. But I think we do need to, our hope is to do more research and to do more monitoring of really what this does for teachers as well as the students who go through the curriculum in the coming years. So hopefully we'll have more to say in the future, but it's promising so far.
Oh, good. So maybe I can turn to Sucheta and ask, you talked earlier about mindsets and systemic issues that pose barriers to women coming into leadership roles or to girls kind of furthering their education. Maybe we can unpack that a little bit more. Can you kind of share, your experiences in this area?
Sure. Thank you, Kathleen, for that. So when we look at these biases, systemic biases, I see them in three. It's not it's what we know, that they come across in three different ways. They land in three different ways. One is an institutional bias, right? Both you and Azad opened your conversation today with how there are almost 80-90% teachers who are women, but not the same representation of school leaders who are women. This is an institutional issue. It's not the experience of one woman or not the lack of capacity or capability of a single woman, but it is an institutional issue. And this is true in institutions across, different verticals, different sectors across the world. I myself spent about 10 years in the corporate sector, and all my managers and supervisors were men. I had hardly any female role models. Even today in corporate India, we know that 92% of CEOs are men. So these are institutional issues. This is true whether it's politics, whether it's media, whether it's education. And that cannot be solved just by empowering women. This needs policies. We need to change laws. We need political will. We need budgets, right? That's only then can systemic issues like that be solved, which is not just about empowering girls or just looking at what curriculums we implement, which are important, but we're really looking at institutional mindsets and how we change that. The second way in which systemic biases really show up is in our interpersonal. I think that's something I heard a lot we speak about. I resonated with Jayalakshmi's story. My parents also wanted me to be a boy. I have two older sisters. So there was this kind of, anxiety, who will take forward the family name and who will become the engineer. My father is an engineer. So there was this, at least a tacit kind of expectation or hope that I would be a boy. But I was a girl, and I know that this is true of so many girls. Within families, the relationships that girls have with their parents typically start like this, that they hoped we would be a boy. And similarly, like what Kathy said, how teachers interact with students. Are they answering to the boys all the time to the boys? Are they just giving prominence to the boys? Are we assessing children and their success based on parameters that might only work for boys but not for girls? So how does this show up in our interpersonal relationships, whether it's with our parents, with our teachers, with our friends, our peer groups in our families, in our communities, and how we can change that. And I think Project Shakti and everything that Kathy said is very, very important to be able to do that. The final way in which it lands is internalized. We cannot, all these messages finally internalize inside of women, and we ourselves believe we are not capable. My own journey of becoming a CEO of Dream a Dream was actually in that setting, especially, it was just my own belief. I had to take over from a co-founder, who had much more experience than me. He's also my husband. So I spent 4 or 5 years just having to convince myself that I am capable. I can do this. I don't need to be like someone else. And I'm not this, I still don't know if I can do it. So how do we work with girls in terms of how these messages and how these biases are internalized, and we help shift that also inside of them? So again, it's while institutions change and we change interpersonal relationships, we also invest in building the confidence, belief, and just helping girls find their voice and helping them believe in themselves. So that's how I see the 3 ways in which we need to impact the system to really create a mindset shift. And this is true of any system, but definitely true in education.
Yeah, and so, you talk about policy, budgets. I mean, how can we do that? Women leaders, I suppose, in government, in policy would help a lot.
Yes.
And, it's sometimes easier for us working in the social sector, right? We take matters into our own hands. So you say, I can have a curriculum, I can reach out to the girls. But there is this reluctance sometimes to engage with government. And, in your view, how would you start kind of having that relationship with government to start changing their mindset, that they start thinking about how policy should be changed?
Sure. Yes, there is a reluctance. It took us also almost 15, 16 years before we started working with the government, because, there was this resistance, there was this bias that they don't want to change, they're just set in their ways. It's too difficult to work with them. But in the last few years, we've learned that there is openness. You need certain, pioneers. If you can find certain pioneers, that's what happened with us. We started working with the Delhi government first, which was a pioneer in education reform today in India. And since then, they have been setting the trend of change. But in terms of what you do is that if you find a pioneer, or even if you find somebody who's willing to ask the question, mostly I find that the next thing is, how do you do that? So how can we then help governments in terms to conceptualize some of these curriculums? We conceptualize the happiness curriculum in Delhi. So we help them design it. How do you implement it at scale? How do you build capacity? So this is, again, you need governments that are open, but if they give you a chance, then nonprofits have those expertise that then you can offer, and you can really help infiltrate the system and build capacity inside the system to do that. But like I said, in Dream a Dream itself, where we are today, is so we brought in the happiness curriculum, which was about integrating life skills and social emotional learning into classroom settings. But now we're looking at how can the entire education system be designed for equity. So it's not just about life skills of children, but if I were to change assessments, if I were to change curriculum so that it works for the most marginalized. This is what we're doing today in Delhi, that we are looking at curriculums and assessments, which is not about the, who is the top 10%, but is the curriculum working for the remaining 90% who are coming from vulnerable backgrounds, first generation learners, they, learning maybe English for the first time. How can we change the system to work for the most marginalized versus trying to pick the best and, find your stars? That's really for me what equity in education will look like. When it's not about finding that who's the best topper, who's going to go on and become an engineer, go to Harvard or go to Stanford, but what are those 90%, what aspirations do they have and what skills do they need to really break out of adversity and thrive in this fast changing world?
Yeah, I mean, partnership with government is really important, right? I mean, that's where we can really move the needle. And it needs patience, but I think it's worth investing in.
Yes, and it needs political will for sure, I would say, especially if you're working with government, you do need political will.
And do you find there's more openness in this, where you're working in India?
It's a spectrum. I think there is some openness now. I think COVID to some extent has brought in at least a question if education is truly serving the purpose for young people. But I would say it's a wide spectrum, with Delhi being much further ahead and some other states still being really stuck in terms of traditional outlook towards education.
One step at a time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll get there. And so turning to Lanre, you work with a lot of low-fee private schools in Lagos. And so, in that context, what challenges do you see women leaders facing?
Okay, so within the schools that we work with, we also have like 3 buckets. So we have schools led by men, then we have schools led by women, and then we have school led by a husband and a wife team. And we've seen, different kinds of experiences with that. So for a lot of our schools, especially low-fee private schools, we've seen a lot of women leading, these schools, including a lot of husband and wife teams, but they face different challenges. And I will start with the husband and wife team type of challenge, which is, the teachers know that this school is being led by a husband and a wife. When it comes to taking care of the children or issues around admin, they go to the woman. And then when it comes to major decision making and everything, they go to the husband and say, oh, it's the husband that would help to make the decisions for the school. So we've seen some of those kind of experiences when it comes to, the leaders. And when some of these female or the wife partner comes for trainings, they kind of say, oh, when will they eventually take me seriously as someone that could, make decisions without my husband? And though we're leading this school together, I do everything, but when it comes to the major critical decision time, they revert to my husband. And it happens with the PTA as well. So when they're dealing with parents and they're talking about certain things, the de facto is the woman. And then sometimes even if the male partner is not around, they're like, oh, okay, maybe at the next meeting we can make that decision, so those are some of the feedback we've gotten. And for the female school leaders, we do have a lot of them. I must say that within our own network, most of our schools are led by women, but they do face challenges with even female teachers, male teachers taking them seriously and knowing that they've got this and they can make good decisions. And for me, one of the key things we've tried to do with our curriculum and the work that we're doing with them is to be able to empower them, even as leaders, to be able to stand and be able to be confident in themselves. So there's that personal development side for school leaders, especially for the women, to be able to take charge of their schools and to be able to make decisions, to be able to manage their people. Because within low-fee private schools, we typically have the school owner or leader and teachers. So they hardly have an admin team and all of that luxury of a bigger private school. So they need to be assertive and they need to, kind of take charge. And most times they also teach in the classroom. So they need to be able to differentiate when they're a teacher and when they're the leader. And be able to get their teachers and all other staff to be able to work with them to achieve what they want to do. Another thing we've tried to do, which is not something that has been popular here, is to, try and ensure that they understand the inequalities that exist. So gender is one of them, students with disabilities, the fact that I mentioned that Lagos is a melting pot of different cultures. One of the key part of our curriculum that we teach is the fact that they need to be able to understand the differences in their population. So like Kathy mentioned, embedding parents. So in a typical low-fee private school, depending on your location, you might have access to more of the refugees from the north. You may have access to parents that are factory workers who are not at home. They wake up at 5. Understanding parents is one of the critical part of our curriculum when we're working with school leaders, because they are their customers and they need to understand, where they're coming from, their mindset, their background, why are they not sending children to school. We have schools that have predominantly children from the northern side of the country, where they don't believe girls should go to school. They've been married after primary school. We have one school leader, for instance, who, because of where she's located and the fact that her population are typically parents from that part of the country, she had to define her school. The entire school was redesigned in a way that vocational education was part of the secondary school curriculum, because she knew that she had to negotiate with their parents to get their girls to go to secondary school, but she wanted to be able to empower them in another vocation, so that when they do get off and get married, they're able to actually get income for themselves. So these school leaders have to, typically understand a lot of things around how they work and who their parents are and how to embed all of that in ensuring equity for all. In conclusion, while working with our school leaders, there's also the importance of, so for instance, there are another scenario we've seen is where we found a couple of leaders so we have Muslim school associations. So we have different school associations in Nigeria, and in Lagos, we have about 18 private school associations. Some of these associations are by religion. So we've seen a couple of instances where some associations have had female leaders being relegated because of their religion. So for instance, you go to an association meeting, and I found it strange to go for an association meeting and all the female leaders had to sit at the back and only the male leaders were allowed to sit in front. And then when they're making decisions, they're like, wait, the men are talking, you are not allowed to talk. And even when I went to make a presentation, they asked me, where is my male partner? And I'm like, no, I'm the leader of my organization and I'm here to speak. So, we've seen in different ways this has exhibited, and where we need to empower more female associations. Some of those female leaders, they given just a few minutes to talk, just to express their idea, while the male leaders are the ones that make most of the decisions. So there's really a lot of work to do. And there are different challenges that presents itself in the different areas that we work. So yeah, advocacy is a lot of, one solution I see as what we need more of, which is something we're also working on. We've made advocacy a critical part of what we do, and we try to ensure that we advocate for more women leaders to have a
Yes. Yeah, I think it's the same issue I think that Sucheta spoke about as well, right? It's a mindset as well. It's a mindset of the community, that the men make the decisions and not the women. And there's a lot of work still to be done. But in your experience, seeing that you have both male head teachers, female, and then you've got this amazing husband and wife teams, do you see a difference to the girls if the head teacher is a female as opposed to a male? I mean, do you think that is, you know, how much difference does that make to the outcomes for the girls?
So we've not done any specific research. My response is just based on conversations I've had with some of my school leaders. And yes, it does have an impact on the girls. A lot of the times, the girls are unable to speak to school leaders because of the gender. And sometimes they feel that the nature of the school in terms of how the school is run and sensitive to their needs is based on the gender of the school leader. So I remember one of our school leaders who implemented one of our recommendations, which was to have like gender sensitive bathrooms, like male, female, even for staff, have a male and female one separately. We had, you know, different reactions. So we had a female school leader saying they got increased enrollment, increased attendance for girls because they were able to do that. And we had a male school leader saying their students talked to some of their female teachers saying, is it the principal's wife that, you know, gave him that suggestion about it? I mean, you know, they were just shocked that, you know, this could happen because, you know, he wasn't that sensitive to their needs. So we just hear different stories around that, but we haven't done in-depth research to see the correlation and see whether that is what is. But we do hear those stories that make us, you know that, you know, there's a chance that, you know, when you have a female school leader, the girls are more encouraged.
Thank you so much. And maybe just to ask all of you, you know, the panelists here, that how do you see the next 10 years? How do you see changes in the context that you're working in that will make education more equitable? Anyone, you know, maybe we start with Kathy again.
So I think last year made us have to rethink many things about what we thought was going to be the future. And I think there were incredible challenges and difficulties, but we also saw all of our partners on the ground show great resilience and real leadership in a time of crisis. And it was really, for me, the most, it was the thing that kept me going last year was watching how they problem solved. And so I think as I look forward, I think we at Girl Rising hope that we will see, going to what Suchita was saying, really looking at the institutional levels of the barriers and finding ways to tackle and address those. And we certainly plan to continue to produce some new films, for example, on environment and the impacts on girls. But I think for the education system, I would hope that we would really learn from what we all saw happen and didn't see happen last year. And that the inequities that we saw magnify and grow, really were, I think, brought into sharper focus. So kids who were less likely to be learning in an environment that supported them during COVID were probably the first ones to drop off or to not have access to learning. So I think going forward, I hope we find a way across every country and within countries to reflect on what we learned and what we didn't learn about the sort of state and of education and what it means for girls and boys and different groups. Secondly, I would say we really believe that it's really going to be the next generation. So how do we support the current adolescents and younger students to grow into their own roles as leaders in their local communities and then beyond? And how do we, going back to a point I made earlier, how do we engage parents more effectively? So I think we would like, we see that across many of our partners, certainly in the Girl Rising Global Education Fund that I lead, it was astounding to see adolescents make masks, put up awareness posters last year, help elderly in their neighborhood. They took on roles of leadership that our NGO partners saw new possibilities in the youth that they worked with. And I'm sure that happened in many places around the world. And I guess my hope is that we build on that we really saw different kinds of leadership come up through the difficulties of last year. And how do we build on that? And then when you look at the real devastating effect of COVID on girls' schooling, I mean, there's an estimate of 11 million girls who may never go back to school after COVID. I feel like we've reversed some of our strides forward on gender, and many, of course, many teachers didn't have a job, had to find other jobs. So I think we have to really, as I say, take the lessons from this year and rethink what does that mean for education systems and institutions, and most importantly, how do we really build the kinds of life skills, confidence, voice in students, in adolescents, in school and out of school, so that they can really become the leaders of tomorrow in a more gender equitable society.
Thank you, Kathy. And Sucheta, I'm sorry.
No problem, Kathy. So again, just my own reflections of where I hope the conversation of equity in education will go in the next 10 years. Like I said, a lot of our current reflections really came when we started working with institutions and we started seeing these systemic mindsets that were really holding girls back. But what we realized is it's a lot more complex. And for me, true equity will be achieved when we look at intersectionality. So it's not just girls. I do think we need to change education systems to work for girls. But the day it works for a girl who is potentially a Muslim and a Dalit in India, comes from a low socioeconomic background, is lesbian, is possibly has a disability. The day that education works for that girl, that's when it will work for all girls and it will work for all children. So my hope is that as we take the equity conversation forward, we look at what needs to change inside classrooms in terms of what we're teaching children, what needs to change in building capacities of school leaders, teachers, institutions to do that, make that happen, and what do we need to change in our policies, laws, and just the political landscape for education to work for that child, for that girl.
Yeah, so true, so true. And Lamre, and what are your views on the next 10 years?
So Sucheta actually picked out of what I wanted to say, but yeah, in addition to what she has said, I'm also reflecting on the fact that in the next 10 years, thereabout, Africa would have the largest youth population in the world, and they're going to be mostly girls. And these youth are currently children today. What are we doing? How can we change the trajectory for them? What has COVID done so far, and how has it impacted education of girls? And looking at the fact that we're going to be having a huge population moving forward, what steps can we take right now over the next 10 years to ensure that there's equity? Just as Sucheta mentioned, how can we make education work for every single child? Whether they're from a low-income background, whether they're girls or boys, or whether they have a disability, or whether they're a refugee, or whether they came out of a result of a conflict. Or I mean, there's different situations. We just need to ensure that we make the education system work for them. We make them see more role models in leadership, and we make them strive to be successful and do more. So that's for me what the next 10 years is about. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I think if I can sum up, I think this last year has given us an opportunity to pause, to rethink and reflect on what is working and what is not working. And that when we work towards equity, I mean, I know today we're speaking about girls, but what I hear from all of you is that equity for all will mean equity for girls. And we have to bring up this young generation of children to be global citizens, to be aware of their impact on the world and on each other. And I think there's a hopeful world out there. And, I think looking at young people, I think, as Kathy has said, and how they've really taken on the leadership roles and done things that maybe their parents, their teachers never thought that they could do, and that they see themselves as part of a big community, and that the pandemic has affected all of them, all of us. And so I see hope, and I hope I can hear from you as well that you see hope for the future. So thank you very much, panelists. And we've enjoyed that conversation. And so Azad, if you are there, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you so much for moderating this panel for us. We are opening the chat box for attendees if you had any comments or thoughts that you wanted to add into the conversation. But I have a couple of things that I need to do. One is to just let you know a little bit about what we are thinking about at Global School Leaders as we think about the next 10 years. So I think our view on this has evolved in a couple of ways. One is around this equal representation of women in school leadership positions. So there's a lot of work to be done around that in terms of looking at various countries and seeing how can we both ensure recruitment and selection mechanisms so that women can access the role of school leaders, but also in terms of preparing them and changing that mindset so that they themselves feel that they can come into these positions. So that's one aspect of what we're doing. The other aspect is really looking at the impact of the role of school leaders on girls' education. And regardless of the gender of the school leader, what is the impact of this critical lever in the school on girls' education? So that's something that we are also looking at. And we would, both from the panelists as well as anybody who's attending this or seeing this at a later date, we really, I mean, it's an open thought process for us, and we're very keen to collaborate with other organizations who are thinking about this and who can contribute to our thinking on this. So please do reach out with either comments or reach out in any way you can to us or to any of the panelists around this issue. There's a few thank yous that I need to do. One, of course, is to Kathleen for moderating this so masterfully. If there's a job open for the Malaysian Oprah, you should definitely consider it. But also to the wonderful panelists who've joined us. And we're so sorry that Carolina from the Varkey Foundation in Argentina was not able to join us. But the panelists who've joined us today just show that there's so much deep thinking happening around this issue. And in some ways, we need a place to channel this thinking and to consolidate it so that we can really make a push on these issues. So really want to thank Landre, Sucheta, and Kathy for your thoughts on this, and more importantly, for your work that you've been doing. oftentimes unsung, but we really appreciate the work that you've been doing on this. In terms of, there's a couple of people I personally want to call out for influencing my thinking on this, as well as our organizational thinking on this. One is our board member, Dana Schmidt, who works with Echidna Giving. As some of you may know, they're one of the leading funders around girls' education in the world. And Dana's just been very, very helpful over the years to take us on this journey and educate us about what we should be doing on this issue. The other person I want to thank is Karen Edge, who's a professor at the Institute of Education in London. We've had numerous conversations around this issue, and she's really helped to shape my thinking on this. So thank you, Karen. I don't know if she's here, but thank you for that. A couple of logistics thank yous. One is to Adishri Parasnis, who's our Director of Communications here at GSL. She joined only a couple of months ago, and she's pulled this fabulous webinar together. So I really appreciate her work. And Swarna Surya, who's a Product Manager for Technology at GSL. She's just done a fabulous job in organizing the logistics around this event. So really appreciate her work as well. Again, we really encourage all of you to reach out to us to push us along further on this journey. It's a long journey. I mean, we clearly it's not just any one organization that can really move the needle on this. It'll take all of us working together. So we encourage you to reach out to us with thoughts and comments and ideas that you have for us. And we look forward to working with all of you going forward. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending this webinar. And we hope to see you sometime soon. And thanks again to Kathleen and the panelists.